Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast, friends. It's Kim Skorupski here at the wonderful island of Galveston at the University of Texas Medical Branch, and I'm looking at a new guest on the podcast, Dr. Joshua D. Hartzell, MD. Good morning, Josh. How are you?
Good morning, Kim. Doing great, thanks.
Well, thanks for being here. Folks, let me tell you who's Dr. Josh Hartzell. He just, first of all, wrote a great book. It's 456 pages long. It's chock full of information. It is entitled A Prescription for Caring in Healthcare Leadership, Building a Culture of Compassion and Excellence. Dr. Hartzell is a retired Army colonel who spent 25 years in military medicine. A practicing internal medicine and infectious diseases physician, he has devoted the last decade to developing future leaders training and teaching thousands of students, residents, and faculty within healthcare. Dr. Hartzell is a sought-after speaker and coach on leadership development who brings the leadership lessons he has learned throughout his career to readers in this book. His whole life, his mantra, he told me, is, I am devoted to helping people become effective leaders. Dr. Hartzell, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, first off, Kim, thanks for having me on. It's a real honor. You've had some amazing guests, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And yeah, leadership is critically important. I think we share that love and passion and recognition that, you know, if we want things to change in healthcare, we need more effective leadership.
Well, how do you see leadership development in healthcare? I mean, I was just giving a talk. I know you were just giving a talk at Hopkins last week with my colleague, former colleague, Dr. Colleen Christmas, and I was giving a talk in the geriatrics department, and I hearkened back to the military term VUCA: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And so we were talking about, geez, these are the times. Boy, it's happening, just kind of like when COVID hit. How do you lead in these times? So how do you see and how have you experienced over your career leadership development? Because I think in military, I always think of military, they got it figured out. So I'm really always curious to talk to people who dance on both worlds, academic health and the military. So how do you see it?
Yeah, it's a really important question. You know, I think for leadership development within healthcare, we've made progress. But I think we have a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to evolve in how we think about it. And this is whether it's physicians, nurses, other allied health professionals. We need leaders from everywhere in healthcare and at every level of healthcare. And I think with that, we need to approach leadership development from that same perspective. So particularly for physicians, you know, what does it look like in medical schools in terms of leadership development? Again, there are some schools that do this, but it's really not the norm. And, you know, even when you look at it, it's sort of all over the place in terms of what is taught and what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, I think for me, one of the biggest things for medical students is simply, I want you to recognize that leadership is important and that as a medical student, this is the beginning of your leadership journey. Although I will say a lot of medical students come in already having led. So we need to capitalize on those lessons as well. But really, this is the beginning of their medical leadership journey and get them to sort of buy into this idea that they need to be students of leadership. And then we need to sort of take that right into residency training and think about, now that you're, you know, in the hospital, leading teams, working with teams, how can you do this more effectively? And even though you may not be in positions of leadership, you're clearly leading. I mean, you think of all the leadership skills that it takes to deliver patient care, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, teamwork. I mean, these are the essential things that everyone needs to know how to do. So we can leverage those experiences that residents are going through and help them learn about some of these leadership principles while they're there. And then again, now in your junior faculty, we need to build on that. What are the things and the changes that your experience as a junior faculty? Now, maybe for the first time, you're in charge of a clinic, or maybe you decide to open your own practice. What are those skills now that you need? And then again, the next step might be, you know, a larger leadership position or some other role that's going to require new skills. And we need to think about this as sort of a longitudinal lifetime leadership curriculum. And, you know, that's the goal. I think we're lucky in military medicine that we get to work with people over that spectrum of a period, at least until they leave the military. So we have leadership development at the medical student level, certainly at the Uniformed Services University. Our health professions scholarship students are, a little different in that they get their education for medical school at whatever school they train at, and then they join us for residency. We actually just did a recent needs assessment where we looked at leadership training in our graduate medical education programs. And I don't want to steal too much thunder from that study, but I'll say we do it okay, but we have a lot of room to grow even within the military. And then I think when you look at civilian programs at graduate medical education, there's some exemplars and some models that do it well, but room for improvement. And then faculty and staff the same. I think, we really need to think about how can we make this part of who we are while we're still delivering the care? Because ultimately, I don't know what your experience has been, but for me, and I have a colleague who used to say, Jessica Servey, who's one of our associate deans, that it's a leadership issue. Most of the things we experience and our challenges are not clinical care issues. Like, we're really good at the clinical care part, but it's all the messy leadership stuff and how to deal with that.
Wonderful. And I want to go in 100 different directions. But the first direction I want to go to is I want to play devil's advocate. And this is contrary to what people like you and me think, because we live, breathe, eat. We know leadership. We understand all these, some people say soft skills and go poo-poo. Because I think there's a lot of people think, I just want to do my job. I trained and I learned all these skills and techniques, and I have this financial acumen or the surgical delicacies. I understand the brain like no one else. I don't want to be bogged down or distracted by leadership stuff. So again, I'm putting a different hat on because you and I probably work with a lot of people who say, I want to be a leader. I want to be a leader. Help me be a better leader. So that's the one end of the continuum. But the other end, I know there are people out there who are like, I'm not into careerism. I studied to be a scientist. I just want to deal with my cell cultures. I don't want to lead. So what is the posture for that other side of like, why are we even talking about this? Why do we have to bring all this leadership stuff? Leadership. Leave me alone and let me do my job. What is at the crux of it? Who cares?
I guess I would respond with two things. The first is maybe a little sarcastic, and it's.
Oh, I love sarcasm. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm signposting the sarcasm because my wife is like, they don't get your sarcasm, so I'm just making very clear that
I get it. I'll totally get it. I promise you. Come on, bring it.
Oh, I appreciate it. I guess my question would be, well, how's that working for you?
Ooh.
Right? Like, I think a lot of people say that they don't want to get involved in the leadership issues, and that's for somebody else. But even if you want to be the best researcher in the world and, sort of focus on your area, do you have a team that you work with? Do you have collaborators that you have to negotiate with and work with? Do you have to communicate to people about your vision of your research?
Okay, maybe can I?
Those are all research skills.
Yeah, let me poke you right there, because maybe I'm sure you have too. I've coached people who are like, their answers would be, "Indeed, I do, Dr. Hartzell, but I expect them to do their jobs just like I do my job. I'm not responsible to babysit or help other people to do their jobs. There are expectations around doing this job. Do your job. Quit whining. I don't have time for that kind of nonsense." That's a real posture. That's a real life posture, especially when we have all these competing demands on our time. It takes time to be in transformational relationships. So bring it on heavier. So again, how's that working out for you? It's working out fine. Well, okay. What's the next question? What is your turnover? What is the satisfaction of those teammates? Could you level up if, there's a certain level? Yeah, you're doing all right. You're making your papers, you're getting your grants, you're doing your science. And are you leaving something on the table? And what might that be? Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, go.
You stole my question. That is my second question. No, this is wonderful. That is exactly the second question is, what are you leaving on the table by not leading effectively?
I told you I'd get you.
Right. And I think that's a great question for people. Like, and it makes them really think like, oh, you know
Nothing.
what?
Maybe
Like,
they'd be like, nothing. I'm good. I'm
okay,
number one in my field. My department's, we're in the top five. My school's this. I just got a big grant. Meh. I'm fine. What are you talking about?
then if you're number one in your field, one, how are you going to maintain it?
Ooh,
Two, are you are you satisfied with where you're at? And
yes.
if you are, good for
Good,
you.
good on you.
I feel like most of us in life are continually pushing like to help more people, to do better for our patients, do better for the people who work for us. If you've really like if you've conquered the game, boy, I would love to meet you and pick your brain and learn from you.
Right. I'd want to read your book. Right. I'd want to read your book. I think that's great, Josh. That question that really inspires. The good coaching question that I learned from Dr. Jeff Auerbach at the College of Executive Coaching. That's where I got my certification. He'd say, a good coaching question is something that they can't necessarily answer at the moment, but boy, it's going to stick with them. And they're going to go home or at night toss and turn and say, what Dr. Josh Hartzell asked me, he asked me, what is my preferred future self? Preferred future self. Huh. If I keep doing this, how are things going to play out for me? Ceteris paribus. If nothing else changes, probably okay. But we know that things change. VUCA times, generations of new learners and new early career faculty and new fellows and new residents and new pay. There's something new. So can we truly ever maintain the same path without, can we dip our toe in the same river? Wasn't there some kind of thing about it's never the same place? So I don't know. I think that's the challenge is really? I mean, there's no opportunity for growth? And we're so growth minded in academia, as you know, so our brains are so curious. It's hard to imagine someone would be like, no, I'm good. I'm done. I'm cooked. Fully cooked.
Yeah. Well, also, I don't know who said this, but I remember hearing it at one point, and it was this comment that today's success does not guarantees tomorrow's success.
I'm holding silence for that. Today's success does not guarantee tomorrow's success. There's another book, What Got You Here Won't Get You
Yeah.
There. I think it's
Yeah.
Gold.
Marshall Goldsmith, right?
Marcia Goldsmith, see? Look at us. We are siblings in this whole leadership stuff. All right, this is wonderful. So I knew this would be a great talk. Talk to me more than about this whole the idea that this is soft, squishy, feely stuff. I mean, you mentioned emotional intelligence, and some people when you say emotional intelligence, their eyes roll and they go, "Here we go. We're going to do these circle of trust drops, and you're going to have me jumping off of something, and I gotta all this touchy feely stuff, the mushy stuff. When my instinct is to like, listen, I'm held to RVU accountability. I got the bottom line here. I don't have time for your emotions and your feelings and relationships. How do we combat that doubt or skepticism that what you and I love so much doesn't mean anything?
Yeah, a few things. One is I have a surgery colleague, Amy Vertrees, who I interviewed for the book, and she's outstanding. And one of her quotes was, "I think you're trying to challenge the perspective that caring, inspired leadership is fuzzy and soft. It's actually monumental strength." And what I loved about this is that the idea that taking care of people or being caring is soft, I think because people hear the word caring and that's sort of what comes to mind. I would argue that, if we really care about people, then we have to dig into some of the more challenging aspects of leadership, which are holding people accountable, right?
Oof.
Setting high standards. If I care about you, I want to set standards. I want you to be better than you thought was even possible. So I'm going to set standards that are going to challenge you, but at the same time, I'm going to come beside you and support you. I'm going to give you feedback, which we know is not an easy skill to do, right? And by that feedback, that accountability and support, you're going to reach heights that maybe you didn't know were possible. And when we do that with the people we work with, that raises the entire game of our organization. Or if you're a researcher, your research team. If you're in medical education, your university, your residency program. So I don't think any of those skills are easy or soft. I think they're really hard. The other point that I like to make, and one of the things I tried to do in the book, knowing that we are evidence-based practitioners of medicine, is that most of these principles that are outlined in the book are evidence-based leadership. So these are ideas that don't just sound good. I mean, sure, there's stories, there's examples, but in a lot of places, there's data that shows that these strategies actually work. So if we talk a lot about clinical malpractice, but what about leadership malpractice?
Ooh.
We have leaders who are doing things that aren't evidence-based. They're not sound from a leadership perspective. We need to shift that. We need to focus on things that we know work. The other thing I would say from a medical education research standpoint is we need to do more research on these things and figure out what are the key elements of leadership within healthcare, what is the evidence behind them, and then let's do those things. Let's focus on the stuff that has an evidence background, just like the things we do in clinical medicine.
Yeah, yeah. We talk about when you say evidence and why it matters and why it's hard is these data have been around forever. Turnover is extraordinarily expensive. So if we did a better job of carefully recruiting the right people to fit into our culture, as you put so nicely, standing and walking beside them during their career to develop them, to challenge them, but to equip them with resources, we'll keep and we'll retain those people. And then when they are, if they are, ready to launch and go somewhere else, now we're standing aside from them and we're watching them fly out of the nest and we're proud and they're looking back and they're happy to say, I learned everything I know from Dr. Hartzell versus get this guy out of my nest or we can't wait to get rid of him, or they can't wait to get out of here. Like, hasta la vista, that place, was terrible. So I think if we pull that train backwards, we can see financially, if they're all about dollars and cents, this has been counted. People have analyzed the return on investment of thoughtfully, carefully curating our most valuable, I hate to say assets, but resources are people and relationships.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, I think John Gordon, who's an author, coined the term like return on investment in people. So ROIP. And what you said about retention, $500,000 to $1 million to replace a physician. I read a number because I'm preparing for a talk on nursing, 60,000, but potentially up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for nursing turnover, especially when you think of the number within an organization. Why are we always playing catch up? Why don't we take some of the money that it would have cost to replace these people and invest that up front in their development, in their well-being? I mean, let's hire a couple extra administrative support staff to take the burden off of the physicians. That is going to cost way less than replacing one of them, right? And you're going to decrease burnout, which we know burnout. When we look at the data behind burnout, worse patient outcomes, worse patient satisfaction, not to mention the impact that it has on physicians and nurses and others. We need to take all that money that we're spending recruiting and hiring and put it into primary prevention for the well-being of the people who work in the healthcare system. I think we're getting closer to healthcare systems seeing this and recognizing it. But again, I think it's an area where we have lots of room for improvement.
I can't, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started, Josh. It's just too big a conversation. I would just say emphatically, yes. And can you help us learn? You said something earlier that I wanted to circle back to. You said we haven't really figured it out in the military. So I come up from a family of military. My dad was in the Marines. My sister's in the Marines. And from your perspective, being a colonel in the Army, what does the military do well? Because in my head, I've seen the movies. I've seen the movies where you start in the boot camp and kind of strip away that sense of me-ness and make it we-ness, being very clear on expectations, being fit mentally, emotionally, never leave a person behind kind of concept, and following orders and having strict SOPs, standard operating procedures for how to do things. To me, that sounds really militaristic, but there's also value in that. So I'm curious, when you said they don't do it all that well, or we haven't completely figured it out, Can you talk more about the strengths and, for example, in the Army of the military, the leadership experience in the Army, and then maybe where you think there's still room to grow? Because I always feel like in healthcare, we're behind. We're always behind business. We're behind, the armed forces. What can we learn? And then what can we share? Where's the overlap in leadership development?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't want to give the impression that we don't do it well. I think we do it well. I think what I've seen though is that we can do it so much better. And, I sort of come from this perspective of the idealism, like, why settle for good enough? Like when we can be even better, especially when we're talking about people's lives, the lives of the people who are delivering the care, but also our patients, because every incremental increase in terms of how we lead effectively has huge ripple effects across, people's lives in our organization. So I guess that would be the first point. The things that we do really, really well in military medicine are culture. And I think there's this idea that within our culture, it really starts with the recognition of taking care of each other. Even when I was a ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps cadet, it was made very clear to me that my job as the leader was to take care of my people. And throughout the course of my career, that's always been sort of the consistent message is like, you're in charge. Being in charge is a responsibility to take care of your people, whatever that looks like. And then I think the other thing that we do well is we mentor and coach on a personal level incredibly well. I mean, I've had so many remarkable, senior leaders who have been willing to invest their time in me. I mean, you look at just people I talked about in the book, Greg Argyros, who is my program director, who's the president of MedStar in Washington, D.C. I mean, he was just on a different podcast. The woman who interviewed him said that of thousands of leaders she's ever worked with or seen, he was the best. And, I think having the opportunity to work with people like him, Glenn Wortman, who was my program director, who modeled so many effective ways to lead, Chuck Callahan, who you might know who was at Maryland for a while, just phenomenal. But even at a senior level, these leaders would be looking at ways to invest in junior leaders. And I think that idea that part of our responsibility as leaders is not just the day-to-day running of the business and the running of whatever organization, but it's looking below and building our bench. I think we do that really, really well in the military. And I mean, honestly, part of it is because we all know that we have a lifespan. We're going to retire at some point, and we have to build that next generation to be able to sort of take charge. And then we have other formal ways to do it. But I think that mentoring and that idea that my job as a leader is to develop other leaders is one of the things that's done really, really well in military medicine.
Dr. Hartzell. So now half my brain just blew out because you totally just changed my head about something. That taking care of each other as the mantra, the pivotal component of culture in the Army, taking care of each other. I'm sitting here racking my brain, and I could be the only person in academic health who has missed this message. I don't remember anybody ever saying that. And I've been in a lot of different institutions, taking care of each other. I've never heard of that. No one has. And again, I will admit that maybe at every academic health center I've been, that's been said, and I just wasn't there that day. But as leaders, we are charged with taking care of each other. I would say, oh my gosh, if someone said right away, ran into my office, Kim, what do leaders in academic health have to do? I'd be like, oh my gosh, meet budget, develop policies, create programs, do research, evaluate the research, produce scholarship. It's a coin of the trade. It's a coin of the realm, the currency of the trade. I have to go give talks. I have to get promoted to get myself up the ranks to earn my cred. And then I have to be on projects. I have to do administrative work. I have to hire people. there's a lot of I, but in no explicit term do I ever remember anyone saying, no, your primary job is to take care of people. Now, maybe on the hospital side, that is, embedded in the idea that, well, naturally, we're all in healthcare to take care of these people. These are patients. But as a leader, I really, really, I'm going to sit on that for a while and think about that. That to me, because that shift of saying, no, being a leader is not about you or a budget or all these other like objective things that we think, accreditation or LCME is coming or JACO's coming. Yes, those are things that have to be, those are maybe responsibilities. But the mission of taking care of each other, oh my gosh, if you switch that mindset to that, that kind of changes priorities, doesn't it?
That's the hope. I mean, that's the whole like sort of thesis or premise of the book. And I think to all of the things you said, right? Like all of these things that we have to do, who does them? It's the people. Like ultimately, the people in our organizations are the one that allow us to do the research, do the education, meet productivity requirements, see the patients. If the people aren't there and aren't functioning at an optimal level, again, going back to the other question, what are we leaving on the table by not taking care of them? And I like to ask people, think about the best boss you ever worked for. What was special about that individual? And my guess would be the things that come to mind are not like, wow, she had an amazing vision. She was so productive. No, it would probably be, wow, she really cared about me personally and professionally.
She took care
And
of
then
her
the second
people.
question I ask is like, if she called you today and needed something, would you do it?
Ooh, that's an important question. That is a great indicator of, gosh, powerful, impactful leadership. I love that, Josh, if your former boss called you, emailed you, texted you, would your immediate reaction be, ugh, this one? What does he want or what does she want? Or would it be, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Yes, on it right now. I've got you. That is a great question that indicates that person was a good leader. And like you said,
Yeah.
why? Why? Not that she could balance a budget like nobody. Well, get AI could balance a budget. That's not it.
I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
so imagine having an entire team or organization where everybody had that, like, yeah, I'm on board. What do you need? I'm here to help you. Let me get that done for you because of the way you've treated me, because of the way you've invested in me, helped me grow, took care of me when my family was sick. Like all of these things, we can create that culture which will allow us to perform at much higher levels, but it's going to require us to be intentional about how we lead and take care of our people.
And then it just, as you said earlier, Josh, the downstream effects, the ripple effects are that if I am modeling that of I got you, I'm taking care of you, we're taking care of each other, then naturally that feeling, that value is like that. We're all going to take care of each other on the team, even in absence of the leader being in the room or there that week. Oh my gosh, Josh, you look like you're, dragging butt a little bit. Let me help you out there. Hey, Kim, I noticed this. Can I do that? We are then more motivated that we are all taking care of each other. Who's lagging behind? Let me drop back and see what's going on the back of that line. Come on, we got you. Take a breather, pull off. Let's take a break for a second. We all back on deck. Okay, everybody powered up. Let's rock and roll again. So that sensibility to me seems it just so obvious versus an organization where it's everyone for themselves. Like if I'm helping Josh, that means I'm not doing my job and I'm going to get dinged. If you're helping Kim, I'm helping her so that she's going to climb up the ladder. Then I'm left at the end here. That I feel like I see a lot of that, especially when times get tense and stressed and pressures and money dries up and budgets get shifted around. It becomes kind of like all for one. Like I have to take care of myself. And that's what leads to that closing in and looking inward versus this feeling of let's take care of each other. We're going to get through this together. Yeah. Wow. Talk to me about your, can you kind of review? We're going to have a link in your episode on the facultyfactory.org to your book, A Prescription for Caring in Healthcare Leadership. But Josh, can you go through the chapters, maybe just kind of read, so give the listeners a sense of what you're talking about in this book, and then maybe kind of give us a high level overview of your favorite chapter.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we talked about, the premise is that the whole book is based on the idea that we need to take care of our people. And then, the first couple chapters are essentially how this idea of, caring, inspired leadership and taking care of your people fits in with other leadership models and what is the evidence behind it. That's the first sort of couple chapters of the book. And then the latter half of the book is divided into individual chapters that I like to refer to as caring acts of leadership. And each chapter is essentially a topic or an idea that we can do as leaders. So, first off, how do you take care of yourself as a leader? What does that look like? How do you prioritize your health? How do you take care of others as leaders? Right? There's a chapter on preparing to be a leader. So, how if this is all important, how do we actually do this? What does that look like? How do I study to become a more effective leader or get coaching or take courses? And then we have chapters on, delegation. Probably one of the most common areas I see leaders struggling with is how to delegate. Rahul Amin, who's a physician I worked with, said that, micromanagement gives him anaphylaxis.
And that's the chapter about the monkeys. I love the monkeys. You have to tell us about that.
Yeah.
First of all, circle back to that, but tell us the rest about the book.
Yeah. And then, so there's 3 chapters on feedback. I think the word feedback is mentioned over 400 times in the book. So how do you give it? How do you receive it?
Value it.
There's a chapter on investing in the people you lead in terms of, coaching, mentoring, and sponsoring. We have chapters on, how do you hold people accountable? What is compassionate accountability? So each of these chapters, coming sort of from my educator background, ends with a prescription.
I love that.
And those prescriptions are really about tactical steps you could take today to help you lead more effectively. And what I love about, I guess I should love my own book, but like if you picked up the book and you said right now, like, Josh, I'm really struggling with, how to give this person feedback. I'd be like, you just read the chapter on feedback. Or I'm really struggling with, defining my values as a leader and what that looks like. Go read that chapter. So you could read the whole book. You could read a chapter. You could come back to it and read it when you're facing those areas. I wanted it to be sort of a, thinking militarily. I wanted it to almost be like a tactical field manual. So we have field manuals in the military that you use for certain tasks. This is it. You can have, and you mentioned it's long, and actually had to cut it from what it would have been.
Oh my gosh.
But I wanted it to be like a go-to reference for leaders in healthcare where, it's sitting on that wonderful bookshelf behind you. And whenever you need it, boom, you pull it out, you can use it. And then maybe you come back to it in a day or a week.
Yeah.
But my hope is that it really helps guide people through the challenges that we face in healthcare leadership.
I want to plug this chapter, one of the chapters on feedback. No feedback is still feedback. I love that. I don't have time for feedback. So you're not giving it? Guess what? You just gave some feedback. And your prescription was, you've got 8 of them at the end of this chapter. Give someone positive feedback each day this week. Ask someone to observe you giving feedback and give you feedback on it. Develop a pattern of giving feedback, like Feedback Friday. So you have these great, like you said, very practical, pull off the shelf. Isn't there a chapter on that? Boom, go there, go to the end, give you some ideas. I think it's really, really great. Talk to us about the monkeys. I like that idea of delegating?
Yeah, this is, I believe, the most popular Harvard Business Review article ever, or it's close to the top. It's Who's Got Your Monkey? And the basic idea is that we take over other people's problems. And we do this all the time in healthcare and all the time in leadership. Kim has a problem, so she brings it to me. And instead of me sort of coaching you through it or empowering you to solve it, I just assume that problem. And I keep assuming these problems or monkeys. And eventually I have all these problems and monkeys. And I'm asking myself, why can I not get anything done? Why am I stuck in the weeds? And it's because I have all these quote unquote monkeys. When I read the article, it was really life changing. And I mentioned it in the book to get people, one, to go read the article, but two, just to recognize that, our job as leaders is not to be the omnipotent problem solver, right? But in some cases, it's actually to help the people we lead solve those problems, empower them, coach them through it so that the next time it comes up, they're able to solve the problem. And that frees us up to do the work that only we can do. In your role, I'm sure there are only things that you can do. When I was program director for the medicine residency, there were certain things that I couldn't really delegate those to an associate program director or a chief resident. Like those were my tasks. But the more monkeys we put on our back, other problems from other people, the less we're able to focus on our work. And that obviously can lead to, less strategic thinking, less strategic work, and burnout.
Yeah. And so you're so right in that then we're training people how to treat us. We're training people like, oh, gotta take it to Josh, gotta take it to Josh, gotta take it to Josh. And then it starts this cycle of, I'm like, oh, or here we go again. Here comes Kim again with another problem I have to solve for her. You're training me to always look to you, and you're training me to be ineffective. I have no power. I'm not being stretched or being pushed or pulled into more responsibility and having confidence that I can solve the problem for myself. So it kind of builds this repetitive cycle of disempowerment. So I really like that the coaching that you brought up, the coaching mindset of I'll thought partner with you. Let's think about this together. What are your options, Kim? What do you think you could do? And I'd be like, well, I got these three options. And you might say, oh, is there something else? And you're like, I don't know. Could I? Yeah, man, that's another option. What obstacles might you encounter? And how might you then circumvent those? So you're helping me to like, if then causal loop this thing versus saying, Josh will fix it. Because then again, it's like those neural pathways. If you keep training me to run that path from my office to your office, from my keyboard to your keyboard, that groove gets in there. And now we're habituated to that I can't function without you. And then in some way, some people might like that sense of control, but it's very inefficient. Then Josh isn't freed up to be doing the deep thinking that he should be doing because he's trained his people to come run into him for every possible thing, which is, ridiculous. That's not good leadership. And many of us do that because it's easier. I better do it myself because God forbid Kim does it. She's going to mess it all up.
Well, and it goes back to that question of how am I investing in the people I lead? Right? Yeah, it might be easier for me to do this, but is that an investment in Kim? Is that helping her get better? Which, again, every time we help someone in our organization become more effective, the level of the organization rises. And I think we sometimes forget that when we're taking over these things or doing it for expediency, that while that is a short-term solution, it is a terrible long-term strategy. And just to kind of capitalize on when we don't, this relates to delegation, but when we don't delegate to people and let them do the work, in some ways it sends a message of, we don't think you're good enough.
I don't trust you.
I don't trust you. I don't value the work that you do. And that may not be our intent, but that can be how it's perceived. So I think it's really important, one, that we delegate to help people grow and evolve. Delegation is a growth opportunity for people. But two, when we don't delegate and when we take on someone else's monkey or task, we are very clear why we're doing it. Kim, I'm going to take this because I know you have 16 other things you're doing, which I need you to prioritize right now. I'm sure you would do this great. You always do this great, but I got it this time. So that you don't get the sense, Josh doesn't value or respect my work. He doesn't think I can do this. I think we have to communicate that, or we run a real risk when we don't delegate.
And you're making me think, Josh, also those who are listening who are parents, this is to me probably a no-brainer. Like when you were raising Grant and Amelia, it's Grant and Amelia,
Yeah.
It's easier sometimes to pick up their toys, to do their chores, to fold their laundry, to empty the dishwasher. It's just quicker if I do it versus beating them up to do it. But that's a classic example of setting guidelines, setting expectations, and then this is your job. You can do it. Yeah, but daddy, it didn't work, or daddy this or daddy that. All right, figure it out. Try something else. That if we always do for our kids, it may be quicker for us, but then you're building that dependency. That how is that helping your kids if you're going to do everything for them because, well, I love them so much and she can't do it as well as I can. Yes, those things are true. Both things can be true. And how's that helping Amelia if you're going to do everything for her? And what about when you're not around? Then what's Amelia going to do?
Totally. And that goes back to your comment earlier about this idea of growth mindset. Like how are we using these opportunities to help people grow, and doing things for people doesn't help them grow.
No. All right. Some takeaways. Why don't you kind of close us off here, Dr. Hartzell, with some takeaways, a couple, 2, 3 that you think you really want people to stick with them and that they're going to go through and read your book. What do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I would say number one, and I try to say this humbly, I don't, like, if you read the book, you're going to improve as a leader. Like, this is like not just me, but the people I interviewed, the lessons in the book, you're going to improve. And each chapter gives you specific skills. So I would say, like, think about where you as a leader need to evolve and maybe get a little bit better. And then just dive into those chapters. Or if you want to sort of read this as like a, more longitudinal approach to your own leadership development, kind of go through it in order. But put it on your desk and just use it as you're facing these challenges. I always think we learn the most when we're applying material. So to me, like, if you read the book, that's great. But really what I would love you to do is not just read the book, but take it and apply it. Because we know that when you take things and you apply them, they become part of who you are as a teacher, as a leader, as a physician, nurse. So apply the lessons. I think the other thing I would say just from this is, always ask yourself, how am I taking care of my people? How is this action that I'm about to take taking care of my people? And then the other question I will often ask, I think especially as we evolve into leadership roles, is, all right, Kim is in front of me. What can I do to invest in Kim? Is it give her feedback today? Is it share this book with her because I think she would benefit from it? Is it send her to this course? But I think if you're always asking yourself, how am I taking care of my people? And then specifically, how am I investing in the people I lead? You're gonna do great things. The people that work for you and with you, you're gonna build influence with them. They're gonna want to do those things. You're gonna create that culture also where other people then start doing these things because you're role modeling it and you're showing it to them. So yeah, my hope would be that you use the book as part of that avenue for, personal and professional growth, and then that you share these ideas with others.
Oh, Josh, and then you will be the leader that when you text, email, call a former mentee, they will be so pleased and delighted to hear from you and will move heaven and earth to do whatever you would be asking them of. I love that perspective of Josh is sitting in front of me. What can I do for him today? As opposed to what can I get out of Josh today? Total mind shift. And wow, what a different way to feel good about what we're doing in healthcare. To be giving, it's not about you. The first sentence in the Purpose Driven Life is, it's not about you. And I think that that's a nice way of capping up this conversation. I'm going to leave the parting words. I always say that when I start talking because you give me some good ideas. But Josh Hartzell, you have been fantastic. I want to have you on again because I want to chat some more. This book is wonderful. I promise I'm going to zip my lip now. Parting words are yours. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, no, Kim, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll just say to everyone listening, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your interest in being a leader. And, we in healthcare have devoted our lives to taking care of others. And I think we can improve our culture if we take that same level of care for our patients and we apply that to each other.
Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas.